Hello, my friend Brandon Pipkin here, the founder of StopEmotionalAbuse.net. Boundaries are this really misunderstood concept. A lot of people think that boundaries are about making the other person do something, or if I set a boundary, the other person is supposed to respect it, and that's that. And that is so far from the truth. If you're in an emotionally abusive situation, you figured out that it doesn't matter what you say. The other person is going to do what they're going to do. Boundaries aren't about controlling somebody else, they're about controlling yourself. I'm going to give you 3 keys as to how to make boundaries work, why boundaries work, why they're so effective, and how they help you, especially in an emotionally abusive situation. So, point number 1 about boundaries. Get very clear on what you're willing to accept in life and what you're no longer willing to accept in life. So the reason that that's the first key to boundaries is this. If you're in an emotionally abusive situation, you're probably used to being screamed at, yelled at, treated poorly, etc. You have to decide if that's the way you want things to be going forward. And if you decide that going forward, you're no longer willing to accept standing there while somebody spits in your face and screams at you, you can set a boundary around that, which is, when that happens, I'm walking away. That's your boundary. You get to make that choice. Abusers are freedom stealers. And they want you to believe that you can't make choices for yourself. They want you to believe that the only thing that's right and good and the only choices you can make are the ones they want you to make. And so it probably doesn't even cross your mind that when they're screaming at you and bad-mouthing you and doing things like that, that you can actually walk away. But that's one of your greatest defenses. Now, some people are afraid that their abuser will do something worse. And if you're afraid for your physical safety, contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline or do things that keep you safe. So we have some resources on that on our website, stopemotionalabuse.net/resources. We've got some great resources there that can help you keep safe. One of the reasons boundaries are so effective is that when you hold them over time, the abuser understands that you're no longer an easy target. You're no longer easy to manipulate. And so what happens over time, and it takes time, is that they lose interest and they move on to somebody else that's easier to control. And that's not your problem. It's unfortunate, it's sad, it's sick, but it's not your problem. Your problem, your issue, your focus are the actions that you take, not the actions your abuser takes. And so that's kind of the second key to boundaries, is to recognize you only control you. You don't control the other person. You're not responsible for them. You're not responsible for how they act, how they react. You are only responsible for you. Abuser says, if you do that, I'm going to do this. Okay, well, that's their choice. What they're doing, though, is they're threatening you because they're used to that working. They're used to threatening you and you back down and give them whatever they want. And that's how they maintain control. You're not in control of what they do. It doesn't matter what they say they're going to do, as long as you're safe, right? It doesn't matter what they say they're going to do, what they're not going to do. Let them pout, spout, do whatever they're going to do. You're only responsible for your choices. Does that make sense? The third key to boundaries is to be kind, honest, and reasonable no matter what is happening. Kind, honest, and reasonable no matter what is happening. Now, this one's pretty hard, my friend. It's vital. Because if you get upset, if you react, if you get emotional, well, you're feeding into what the abuser wants, which is you off balance, because then they have control. You're not stable. Just stay kind, honest, and reasonable no matter what is happening, and then you have a clear head. You're able to see through what's happening, and you're able to make better decisions. Besides, do you want to be somebody who's unkind? Do you want to be somebody who's unreasonable? Do you want to be somebody who is not honest? Be kind, honest, and reasonable no matter what you're doing, and you don't have anything to worry about. Is it reasonable that you don't want to be called names anymore? Sure, that's a reasonable boundary. So if you've determined if somebody's going to call you names, you're going to stop interacting with them, that's a reasonable boundary. The only people who hate you having reasonable boundaries are the ones who get away with manipulating you and controlling you when you don't. So watch out for your abuser not liking your boundaries and trying to railroad right through those. But if you have an honest boundary, a reasonable boundary, and you're kind in what you're doing, it's not unkind to walk away from an abuser, okay? That's not unkind. What's unkind is somebody abusing you. So it's not unkind to protect yourself from abuse. If you're kind, honest, and reasonable in your boundary, you have nothing to worry about. Don't worry about when they call you the unreasonable one. Don't worry about when they accuse you. Don't worry about when they say you're the abuser because you're ignoring them. No, if they're abusing you and you set a boundary, you're fine. Now, I think I said I'm going to give you 3 keys to boundaries. I'm going to give you a 4th. Here's a bonus key. Be ready for them to amp up their behavior because they're used to you caving. So when you set and stick to a boundary or try to stick to it, the abuser is going to see that as an impediment to their control. So what are they going to do? They're going to push harder. They're going to do all of their same antics to the next level, or they might introduce a few more. So they're going to call you even more vicious names. They're going to start attacking you in front of your family or people that matter to you. They're going to start spreading rumors and lies. They're going to start amping up their verbal threats about taking money away or reporting you to the Child Protective Services or whatever garbage they can think of to try to get you to back down because they hate that boundary. But my friend, don't back down. Don't cave. One of the keys to boundaries is to be clear on what you're willing to live with and not live with anymore, and then stick to that. Don't keep caving, because every time you cave, what it signals to them is, you're right, that's not important to me. I'll let you treat me this way. And guess what the abuser will do? They will abuse you, because that's what abusers do. 3 keys to boundaries. Number 1, be clear on what you're willing to live with and not live with any longer. And when something happens you're no longer willing to live with, you walk away. The second key to boundaries is to recognize you're only responsible for your behaviors, not for the abusers, not for anybody else's in life. You only control your own behavior. The third key to boundaries working, be kind, honest, and reasonable at all times. Keep your head about you, set reasonable boundaries, and you have nothing to worry about. And then that bonus, the 4th one that I mentioned, the abuser is going to try to get you to cave. Don't cave. You will mess up. It is so hard to set and stick to boundaries, especially at first, because you're used to them pushing on you and they're used to you hating conflict. So you kind of cave on those boundaries, and it's hard at first. But once you determine what you're willing to live with and not live with anymore, and you set and stick to that boundary, some magical things will happen. The abuser figures out they can no longer push you around the same way they did before. And after they amp up their behavior enough times and see that you're no longer willing to cave, they look for an easier fight. And then they're not your problem, my friend. If you want some more help on boundaries and healing, check out our free abuse recovery guide at stopemotionalabuse.net. Also, look into what I think is the best abuse recovery program. It's called Stop Emotional Abuse. We'll help you go all the way from recognizing emotional abuse and learning really even more what it is and how much you've been a victim of it, to understanding why it happened, to understanding how you can protect yourself from it, and then toward getting that healing and the peace and the freedom and the joy that you so richly deserve. Check that program out at programs.stopemotionalabuse.net. Hit that subscribe button below, the bell button below, then you'll always get our videos every week. You'll be notified of every new video so that you can stay up to date, and you can learn more about how to recognize and deal with and protect yourself from emotional abuse.